ready to begin? Okay, we've got an hour, which sounds like a long time, but it's not, because these experts have so much information to share, and I want to make sure that they get the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to get started. As you know, my name is Muchaneta Napel, and I have the pleasure of talking with them today. So before we begin, if you could 30-second introduction by everyone. If that's all right, we can start with you at the end.
Okay, then let me start. My name is Madhura Pawar. I work as a product innovation manager in our global product innovation division at Monomers at BASF. And as part of my responsibility, I'm responsible for looking for new applications, new technologies, and new innovations. And one such innovation I will talk about in this panel is Loopamid, which is our fully recycled textile-to-textile recycled polyamide 6.
Thank you. Bilal?
Hi, my name is Bilal Bhatti, and I am the founder of a Swedish company called Papertail, which we like to think is a transformative technology. What it means is that we're using blockchain and AI in a new way to make a business sense. For example, we think transparency alone is anti-business. So what it means is until and unless there is a more business sense and people can make profitable businesses out of it. So we're building different tools to help the brands to reach out to conscious consumers, and at the same time, the right manufacturers and the brands who want to take better control of the supply chain. So that's in a nutshell, Papertail.
Thank you. Francisca, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Francisca. I'm Global Sales Manager at Climatex. Climatex is a Swiss company. We're a technology provider for circular textiles, which means we hold several patents that enable textiles that are from mixed materials to be recycled into monomaterials at the end of their life cycle. Also, we pioneered a sewing thread that is dissolvable and helps disassembling of textiles for recycling.
Thank you. Elaine?
So my name is Helene Smits. I'm Head of Business Development and Partnerships for Looper Textile Co. And we are a company really at the end, so we deal with textile waste. We give used and unwanted garments a new life through reuse and recycling, and also, hopefully, textile-to-textile recycling.
Danielle?
I'm Daniela Antunes from Fulgar. We are a polyamide spinner based in Italy, and we have many sustainable polyamide yarns, including the one that Madhura just presented you. So we receive their raw material and we spin the yarns.
At this moment in time, I'm sure the five of them probably make no sense, but there's a reason why we've brought them together. And I think they're a good example of working together, partnership and cooperation. But to start off, I want to talk about circularity. So let's just jump right in there. What does circularity mean to you, and why is it critical for the future? Who would like to start first?
Can start. So for me, for Fulgar, it's the only solution that we have for textile world. We have already many garments in the planet. So I see as a reduction of raw materials, so natural feedstocks, and also the environment impact reduced. That's how I see. And working with, as you said, working in partnership, because we cannot do it alone.
So your key message is that circularity can be achieved in collaboration as opposed on your own company. Okay, anyone else want to add to that?
Maybe I can, yeah. So as Daniela mentioned, there's really 92 million of textile waste produced annually globally, right? And only 2% of which is really going to fiber or textile-to-textile recycling. So for me, true circularity is really taking the waste that is generated from textiles or the post-consumer waste that is out there in the world, and instead of it being dumped into the environment or incineration or landfill, really putting it back into the production process. Having closed loop solutions which really bring the textiles back into the value chain without them losing performance and value.
Do you think that is possible, though? Are we on the journey to becoming circular, or are we there?
I think that this is a very important aspect of circularity, but still that without also having the design and the circular business models in place, it's an end-of-pipe solution. So those aspects need to be there. It needs to be designed from the beginning to be in a circular system. The product needs to be used as long as possible, as good as possible. We need to do more with less, and then at the end, we can recycle it. And for me, my mission of circularity was very personal because I did a project with a textile sorter, which I'm now working for, ironically. And I just came into this big hall, walls and walls of textile waste, like bales and bales of textile waste just stacked on top of each other. And this was just from one day of, material coming in. And I was like, what are we doing with this? And that was 12 years ago. And to be honest, we're building the solutions, but we still don't have the solutions today. So I made it my mission to eliminate textile waste. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to do this. It proved to be harder than I thought. So yes, we're still definitely not there. We're far from there, actually, because the recent report from Circular Economy said that the textiles industry is 0.3% circular. Yeah. We are using 3.25 billion tons of materials each year, and more than 99% of it is virgin materials. Yeah. So this is something okay, we are far from circular. And I think my last point on circularity to say, okay, it's not a goal. Circularity is a means to an end. Circularity is the strategy that we need to be able to curb the impact of this industry and to keep our ecosystems intact, or keep them from degrading more and keep within planetary boundaries. That's the goal. Circularity is the strategy to hopefully get us there. And
So in your experience, I'm going to stay with you, Elaine. In your experience then, if we need to include it at the beginning of the design process, our current garments haven't had that luxury, unfortunately. So can we be circular with our current garments? Whatever I buy from H&M and Zara, can those be circular products? Can we include them into that?
That's tricky because, yes, we need to deal with what we have. So this is why also Looper and others like us, I'm not saying we're the only ones in the industry doing this, we need to develop solutions and technologies that can help us to deal with the waste that we have right now. Which is why, for example, we are developing sorting technology that can help identify the material so that it can go to the right recycler. In the future, perhaps when we have digital product passports embedded into every product, you can scan it and it can easily, go to even to the original manufacturer. But before we are there and have all these systems in place where all these products have DPP and they're designed for circularity, yes, we are needing to deal with this. And it's not called a circular economy, it's more called a recycling economy, which is, what we can do now and something that we need to do now.
So you mentioned technology, so I want to move to Bilal, because I know you spoke about the technology that you have come up with. Could you explain a little bit about the role it could play in a circular economy?
Well, if I could build on the previous argument, especially if I can try to be not too politically correct and be a bit more blunt, there are a lot of talks about making the whole circularity, right? But in reality, the businesses are there to make more money and maximize their profits.
If you could bring your mic up a little bit so everyone can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we have a lot of talk about circularity, and there are a lot of very nice pilot projects. Technologies exist, we have built this technology, experimented, we have showcased even blockchain also can be scaled up. But the real challenge is the intent, because there doesn't seem to be very quick financial returns on this, and the businesses are there to, maximize their profits, quite frankly. And when you talk about circularity, has a connection with transparency as well, because if you just check different regulations like DPP, for example, or even EPR, it requires more transparency. But the businesses thrive on hiding things. So that's a real challenge within the business community. So I would like to see that what we're looking at, we're not looking at just from the prism of regulations, because we know those impacts are far ahead, and especially in this digital age, what we have just 1 year perspective or maximum 6 months ahead perspective, those things are not materializing. So that's why we are trying to create some intrinsic value in the business. So for example, we have done some projects where in Sweden, 2 brands, they have used our consumer-facing transparency information, and they have been able to increase prices 15% on average, and they have converted almost 16% consumers as ambassadors. So the brands are struggling also to reach out to conscious consumers. Consumers are pushing for this, and the regulators are also pushing for these things, but the challenge is there's no money. So unless we start building and we start thinking from the reality perspective, maybe the goal will be even further to that.
So sticking with technology, I want to move to you, Daniela, if it's all right. I mean, Francisco, actually. Climatex has pioneered some technologies, and I would love for you to explain to us how these innovations have helped address mixed recycling, like the mixed texture of recycling. Would you like me to repeat that? How do you think the innovations of your companies has helped address mixed material recycling?
Thank you for the question. Well, I would say the magic more or less about what we do is a dissolvable thread. Around this thread centers all our innovation. So the original idea was to create something that could help this assembly of mixed materials in the end. So the most simple way to use the thread is just for sewing. So if you imagine you have a garment, kind of any garment has zippers, has buttons on it, or if you think about protective wear, there are reflection stripes on it that helps during lifetime to protect workers. But at the end of the life, for recycling, this can be a nightmare because you need to get rid of it. It's a lot of handwork and it's very cost intensive. So if you sew this with a dissolvable thread, in the end, all the parts can be taken apart without any handwork. It just comes up, it falls apart. And this helps a lot in recycling. But on the other hand, what we also do is using this in a way to weave and to knit fabrics. So you would have a dissolvable part that holds everything together. In this model, you can imagine the orange thread can dissolve. And as soon as the orange thread is gone, you can tear the fabric apart, and then you have the natural fiber and you have the synthetic fiber that you need to have together because performance asks for it. So you want to have a good abrasion, but you also want to have a nice touch and feel on the skin, which a natural fiber can bring to fabric. So this is how we help with blended material recycling.
Can I say, like, this is a great innovation that can really help recycling. But if you look at it also from the systemic perspective, for this to work and actually help recycling, we as the collector sorter, when this comes into consumer garments, when this garment comes in, we need to know this has Climatex. Exactly. Otherwise, it's just being treated as any other garment. Oh, it's a mixed material, so we cannot, you know, it has to go in mixed recycling. Yeah. So I see that these kind of innovations always work really well in also business-to-business settings, right, where you can control, you know, in uniforms or in other business applications where they know when it's end of life, they know this is Climatex and they know how to recycle the materials. Yeah. And for it to really have its benefits in the consumer market, it needs this systemic innovation as well. And this is always what I say, like theoretical recyclability versus practical recyclability is something that needs to be considered when we look at new innovations, like new materials and these kind of things in the market.
So how would you think we should be able to identify if it's Climatex? Would you say that that's the DPP steps in, or, I mean, how do you foresee that in a perfect world?
In a perfect, well, I always feel like we will have dual systems for a long time because we know that even if DPP comes into the garments, there will be a backlog of other garments and also still garments coming from outside of Europe potentially that don't have that. So it can be a collaboration to understand how near-infrared sorting technology can detect new materials or new type of or Climatex, or sometimes people make certain types of coatings that somehow, okay, how can we ensure that that we can detect them so that they can be sorted out properly? And then, of course, when this can be embedded into like an NFC tag or something like that in the future, then, you know, we will know in that way what the material is. But yeah, so it's collaboration.
I mean, I think it sounds like a really good type of technology. I think my only fear might be that we have so much waste already. We've got a lot of traditional textiles already that unfortunately do not have this innovation in place. So would you say it's wisdom to deal with that first and then move forward? I know I can see you want to answer this question, so please feel free to do so to start off. Would you say that we should deal with our overflow of traditional textiles first, that problem, and then we can put the solution that was put forward by you, Francisca, into the system? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to actually add on to the discussion.
Go ahead.
Also, just to answer your question, I do not think that there's one solution that fits all. Of course, both can be done in parallel, right? But yes, there is a mountain of textile waste currently, which is coming in, especially in EU, from say 20 years ago, 10 years ago, which does not have this new technology. But maybe to add on to what they were saying is, for example, a technology like this, Climatex, which is new, or Lupamid, which is then the fully recycled polyamide, which then comes from the garment waste that is currently being collected. We are looking at also digital solutions like what Bilal is offering. We do have a text tracker, which is basically a digital tracker, which is giving each and every collected textile, which is currently being generated, a unique QR code or a unique number, and then it is being digitally traced through the system. So for Lupamid, we are actively looking into traceability, so that it can actually tackle the problem of textile waste that is being generated now. And for example, through our technology, which is then taking the textile waste and then breaking it down into its molecule and then repolymerizing it, we are actually bringing it back into the textile garments, where it is going to be the same material. So you don't have to really have other technologies or other things to trace it, in the sense that it is going to be the same material with the same performance, and it could be woven into the new garments in the same way. That being said, we are still working on traceability, and we are also tracking the textile waste that is being used for generating our technology.
So Madhura, can you let the audience know what Lupamid is, just in case they're not aware?
True. So just to give a small background, Lupamid is our, so we launched it last year, actually in January, where it is our solution for the current textile waste that is generated, right? It's the post-consumer and the garment waste that is being generated by the garment manufacturers. Having that and then chemically recycling, so breaking it down into its component and then repolymerizing and to be used into new garments. So really a truly circular solution that goes from textile waste into textiles.
Sorry, because you said post-consumer coming from garment manufacturers, I think you mean post-industrial coming from...
No, so both, in the sense post-industrial or pre-consumer, as we call it, which is the cutting and stitching waste that is being generated by garment manufacturers, as well as post-consumer, which is end-of-life material. That is then the sorting technology and the sorters, which are helping us. We're also collaborating with them, and then using that to be recycled into the virgin-like quality.
This is great. Mm-hmm. So you can take our polyamide waste.
Yes.
I mean, it's honestly, I looked at our sorting data. It's only 1% of the textile waste that is really pure, because you can only take pure.
No, and that is the other thing, is that since it is a very robust technology, we can actually take about 20% impurities into the waste. So, of course, we collaborate, we work very, very well with our spinners as well as the sorters who provide us feedstock. And, but it can actually take, in fact, it can take more than that, but then at some point you are recycling not the polymer, but the impurity. So, no, we can actually take post-consumer waste as well.
You mentioned that you're working with Daniela. Could you guys explain your partnership a bit better so people can understand how you work together?
Yeah, Fulgar is a customer of BASF. They produce the polyamide polymers, not just this one that she mentioned, but also the conventional polyamide, and the one that's very interesting as well, recycled from end-of-life car tires that we launched together 4 years ago. So now we are launching this one that's also polyamide, but from end-of-life garments. And the quality, I'm just repeating and emphasizing what you said. The quality is the same of the conventional polyamide. So you can having any color of the fabrics, no breaks, no stripes, the same quality of polyamide. For me, the breaks are the same high level quality for my production, and also traceability is important, so GRS certified, so all the chain can be traced. So we are very excited about this. As she said, it's very interesting. It is very interesting, and we are already producing some samples of garments for showing to the customers.
Yes, I do have a jacket which we
Yeah.
produced, and that means it was produced completely from Lupamid, and this was a small capsule collection we did together with Zara. And we produced 300 units of the jacket, and it went online last year and was sold within a couple of hours. So,
Do you
sold out.
think, as an industry, we can go past just doing small collections? Is it possible to move into bigger collection, mainstream? Because I've seen wonderful innovations being showcased by brands, but they seem to come, kind of like have a little bow and kind of a shake, and then they're gone. So in your experience, with this amazing product that you have, can we go mainstream in the future?
This is you hit the nail right on its head, right? It is critical. The textile recycling circularity cannot work on a very small scale. A critical scale is required across the entire value chain, be it a sorting company, be it a spinner, be it a recycler who's making the polymers, be it the brand, so we need critical scale across the value chain for the recyclers and for everything to be successful, so that we have good quality feedstock, because that's what she also mentioned, right? Do you really have that much? Can you really make the feedstock, the best quality feedstock, take it and actually recycle it? Critical scale is important, because currently in EU, for example, 50% of the garments are actually exported out of EU for sorting, and because there's no infrastructure here for sorting, it's not cost competitive.
Well, is there infrastructure in the global south for sorting?
It is,
I feel like the industry has no infrastructure.
Yes.
Whether it's here in Europe or it's in the global south, we just have not really shone a light on the need for recycling. It's only now that we're realizing how important it is, how much textile we have, all that data, all that information that's scaring us, that we're now trying to make a change. But I don't think there is an infrastructure, or is there?
In Europe, we have an infrastructure. Like, for example, in Holland, where I'm from, actually, there's the sorting capacity that we have in Holland is higher than the amount of textiles that we collect, but that's an exception. In most countries, the sorting capacity in the country is lower than what is collected, and what's going to be collected is going to increase. Because since the 1st of January, there's mandatory collection of textiles in Europe. With EPR coming, we're going to have to collect more and more. And indeed, we need to build that infrastructure. EPR is going to potentially help, because it's going to help kind of subsidize that value chain. We have extended producer responsibility for some other products. We know, you pay something when you buy a product, and then that fee will be, that will help, the proper recycling at end of life. This is going to help something, for sure. But it's also, the whole business model somehow needs to be kind of reinvented, because there's going to be a huge shift happening.
Do you know what it sounds to me like? We have a traditional business model, we have new solutions, which we're putting into an old business model that cannot cope with these new innovations. Yeah. It's kind of like putting diesel in a petrol car and thinking you're going to get very far, because you're not.
It's playing
right?
a circular game with linear rules. Like, you can't, it's...
So do we need to get rid of the business model that we currently have and rebuild a new one?
I think it's going to be in parallel, the two models, for a long time, because as they said, it's needed some investments, it's high cost investments. Yeah. Each part is doing her part, its part, but I see the cost for the moment the biggest challenge, because the crude oil, the virgin garments are cheap.
It's a subsidized industry that we
Yes.
don't realize. Like crude oil products are subsidized, and then we like secondary raw materials that are recycled from post-consumer need to compete with a virgin-based product that is subsidized. It's like
Okay,
an
do you know what?
expectation that's almost.
I want to
incredible.
play devil's advocate. Do you think banning traditional materials at some point to allow the new ones the opportunity to grow is the way forward? Or do you think banning shouldn't happen at all?
I would maybe banning is one extreme, but for example, there is also a lack of clarity and understanding currently. I mean, we need a clear and concise framework and guidelines. Legislation will play an important role in that. Consumer awareness, the vision of the brands, everything comes together. For example, we can start by defining clearly what is the percentage of recycled content that is in there. Banning it completely without having a solution for recycling is also, not the way forward.
It's a band-aid on a bad problem.
Yeah.
Bilal, what about digital tools? Can they play a role in helping us understand?
Yeah, I would like to add on to this discussion. That's very, first of all, hats off to you to having this conversation because it looks like a bit more open. What are the real challenges? For example, economy, like as compared to the virgin materials, the recycles cost more, quality low. Who's going to buy? That's the real question, right? And so we have to see who are the power circles here. Who controls the biggest power in this whole supply chain? It's the brands. Why brands are not part of this conversation? So if we bring them on the table and start asking them these questions, maybe we can kickstart a new model and a change that is required within the brands. Because working with the brands for so long, I also know that the buyers, they have the real power. They buy all these materials, beautiful work that you have done, and their targets are to just get the lowest prices. And then sustainability managers are the nice-hearted, people. They want the best working conditions, but they don't have the power. So it's a systemic problem. And as much as I like to think myself as a futurist, I'm a rationalist at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I would support that inventing the wheel. We have such an old industry. We can correct that. Car industry is a good example of that. Now electric cars started, and almost all the car makers are bringing electric cars.
Yeah.
So we have examples. It's just that there is no will. The will is not there because there is no economy yet. So, consumers can only just demand. They have no way of finding out who is actually providing traceable, like you have done so much, to offer traceability. But is it reaching to the right audience? I don't think so.
But it's the same like saying playing the circular game with linear rules. As long as fossil industry is subsidized, as long as, for example, what would change? You said yesterday the example of, okay, if you have to pay for a plastic bag, all of a sudden, a lot of people stopped using plastic bags because you had to pay for it. What if virgin materials were taxed higher than secondary raw materials?
It would change the conversation.
It would change the conversation.
Do you know, taking on what you're saying, I feel like people, they don't do something to be good. They would do it because it costs them money. So, being good is an option for many brands, I feel. So if we say to be sustainable, they'll be like, ooh, can I do it? Can I afford it? Does it make sense for me? And they think with their money. They think of what they can make a profit from. People always say people profit and planet. I think it starts with profit and then planet and then people maybe at the end. So in that particular order. Yeah. So I always feel with brands, you do need to kind of force their hand a little bit and say to them, we'll give you incentives. So if you use this, you can get that. But if you use this, you'll pay extra for it, but that'll be at your own cost. Would you say that's a good way of kind of approaching this problem?
But
Yeah.
Bilal, you can.
I want to hear your but.
No, not but. It's and.
Okay. Okay.
And I would also say that the consumer actually wants to do their part. We had this discussion a little bit yesterday, right? I think more and more people that I talk to and the consumers, they also want to buy recycled material. In fact, even if it costs them a little bit more. But what they are also unfortunately not aware of is what is a recycled material, because she asked a very, very important question to me, and I would basically translated to the consumers as well. What is recycled material in the sense there's so many available right now on the market. How do you define this fiber to fiber recycling? Is open loop, because there's also bottles to textiles, you know. There are other industries which are making recycled, people are recycling scrap yarn, fabric, so not textile waste, but just scrap yarn, nets, for example, and bottles, which are then being converted into textiles, being an open loop. It's an
So
intermediate
you're
solution.
basically saying that word recycling can mean anything.
Yes.
So
And
that is a problem.
yes, because the consumer wants to do, but there's so many products out there which are not really closed loop solutions, which are not truly circular solutions, but that affects the marketability of all the other products as well. So there has to be some clear guidelines, some clear consumer awareness as to what you're buying, even because consumer is ready to pay a little bit more, but what are they paying for?
And if we want to really tackle the issue of textile waste.
Waste.
Of post-consumer,
Yeah.
because yes, there's also post-industrial waste, pre-consumer waste, but the biggest chunk of volume by
Yeah.
far is post-consumer.
Consumer.
So yes, it's good when you're a brand starting with recycled material, doing something with post-industrial recycled. Great,
Yeah.
walk before you can run. Start
Yes.
small, start easy before you can do the hard thing. But if we really want to make this industry circular and close the loop, we need to look at post-consumer recycled material.
Yeah.
But I find there's a problem. Whenever I buy a recycled garment, which I have done, the percentage is always very secret. Because they could say it's this garment's recycled and it's the buttons on my jumper. So the rest of it
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah.
But because I just see recycled.
That should no
That's
longer
all
be
I see,
allowed.
right?
Yeah,
But it's only the
has-
buttons.
Yeah, it has
You
to
know,
be
so I'm thinking
clear.
I'm doing good buying this recycled jumper. But what I learned later on is the buttons on my jumper are recycled. The rest of it is just the same as always.
Which you could now sue for if
Yeah.
under the anti-greenwashing law, because
Yeah.
officially that's not allowed anymore to promote a product as recycled and not define it. So that should improve with this new law being implemented, that it will be more clear to the consumer what is the percentage, maybe not yet what is the origin, because the origin, they might want to let you think that it's post-consumer recycled because that's maybe what consumers think, but it's not always. But yeah.
Which you mentioned,
Which,
actually.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to state that for us, when we are producing Lupamid, it is very important, walk before we run. So we will, of course, start with the post-industrial, but again, not scrap yarn, but really the garment waste, which is the cutting and stitching waste. So it's actually the waste produced by the textile industry. But we are also using post-consumer waste, which is end-of-life textiles, and recycle them to make the Lupamid. So
I want to bring it out to the audience. How many of you have bought recycled garments? How many of you trust that they are recycled? One. Okay.
That's like 10%.
Yeah. So, yes, go ahead, Bilal. You want to add something?
If I can add on to this incentives part, quite frankly, consumers also needs to be offered an economy in it. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we can probably build a very sustainable online profile. Well, might buy one secondhand, but then 9 out of 10 garments would be cheaper, right? Yeah. So that's the behaviors we have. So that reminds me one project we're involved in a Prato region in Italy. We are involving consumers as part of the picture. So when they drop their secondhand wool and cashmere, they're entitled for a discount, and then they're part of the story as well, which we are mapping the whole on blockchain, and we're offering them different types of notifications and where it has gone and what has happened. And they're even entitled for, when the new comes out, they're entitled for buying that as well, being first in the line. So the point is that if we don't involve them as a part of the picture, just expect that's probably going to be a difficult.
I mean, I think that it's going to go two ways. It's going to go the way of like, we're going to wait and rewire the industry, rewire the consumer. They'll get there in the end, you know, kind of approach. Or the approach of like the plastic bag. We're going to actually ban. And yeah, they're going to pay for something a bit more. So if you want to buy your Primark, instead of being at £3, now it's £12 or £15 for a top, when before you were paying £3 for it. So it forces your hand. And if you force someone's hand, it moves a bit quicker. But also it takes away our rights to choose what we want to buy. So I think it's a really hard one to do to kind of create this kind of economy. But I do believe what you said, Bilal, is true. We have to incentivize the consumer as well, because otherwise they won't do it, because we'll always take the easy route, right? So how do you foresee us moving forward as an industry? Is there anything that you can advise, let's say, the audience about this is what we need to put in place? You know, give them a bit of hard love. Don't hold back.
I believe working in teams, as we said in the beginning, because as if I was a brand, I would asking more questions to my suppliers and ask them support to how to improve the communication, how to clarify, how to prove that's recycled or not. This is part of my job with our products. And I see when you clarify, you share documents, you explain how to communicate, they are very happy because a problem is solved, and also their customers can trust on their products, and the image is changed. So I believe going deeper with the suppliers, I mean not just the fabric producer, but also the yarns
Active
and
fibers.
so on.
Sorry to say, but if I can add on to this, because funny enough, before founding this technology, I also founded a garment factory. So I have seen the other perspective. That became the foundation of using blockchain to show proofs and all that. That's a long story. But what I would like to challenge this thought is that when I interact with the factories, they're bombarded by questions, different types of new data additions, and they don't want to do that anymore, because talking about incentives, what is their incentive for them to even provide all that traceability and the data? So this one-sided debate I see, like where it's becoming more and more, and I know it comes out of fear of regulations, but nobody's really discussing about finding incentives for the supply chain partners as well.
But don't you think the incentives is that they get more customers as manufacturers? So if you're a manufacturing company and you are able to, let's say, prove certain things that are aligned with EU legislations, then you're doing their job for them in a way for brands, so they're more likely to work with you. But I think what isn't there for them are the tools to make it easy for them to comply. Because a lot of manufacturers they don't even know where to even begin. So how do we give them that information?
If you're right, It should work like that. That has also, we have witnessed some suppliers did reach out to us, and we helped them tracing that as well, because they wanted to tell a better story and reach out to the new other brands as well. But quite frankly, it did not work for them very well. It's a nice thought, but in reality, the problem is when a brand asks a question of all the traceability and sustainability, they don't want to pay for it. They want to start comparing with all the other certificates. And if you look at the eco-labels, we have 1,000 different eco-types of eco-labels. That's one European study. And only 30% requires some kind of data. And that's why we have only global organic 1.4%. Numerous studies show that 70-80% are fakes. The challenge is the brands use this as a power where they, instead of incentivizing or finding the right ones and pushing them for more, that's exactly happened to us. Because my challenge having this factory was that I was sourcing all the way from Australia, I was paying living wages to the workers, and my cost was higher. And nobody wanted to pay for it. So that's how we said, okay, let's find out how we can show proofs. So we fell in love with blockchain, and that's how it emerged, but that's a long story. But this is still is reality. Unfortunately, it has gone on the other side now after COVID, especially the world scenarios, the politics now. Well, I don't want to say, but what has happened in the US recently, that might have some
impacts, it's not what we don't speak about, but yes, good point though.
But this is another area of innovation and compliance and things, but when we talk about circularity, and I feel that it's very much about the product. So when I was triggered when you were saying talk to your suppliers, I mean, we are here in Key House, Blue Zone, a lot of denim. Actually, the most successful category of incorporating post-consumer content to date is denim. And probably, I don't know if it's still like a thing to promote it. It was a few years ago, where it's possible to include 20% post-consumer content into denim. It's possible to do, like a lot of them are doing 5%, no loss of quality, no change in price. If the higher you go, okay, then maybe there can be a slight price difference, or there might be slight things in certain qualities you can do and certain qualities you can't do. But this kind of like I did a project Denim Alliance years ago, and we basically what we did was bring together brands and manufacturers, and I was so surprised that manufacturers were like, yeah, we can do this, but the brands are not asking for this. And the brands were like, yeah, we want this, but the suppliers are not offering this. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Talk to each other. Because you can ask the question to a supplier of like, I know recycled materials are coming. ESPR is coming. Most probably it will have some sort of idea about mandatory recycled content, hopefully. And so in a couple of years, your products need to contain recycled content. And EU is also pushing towards post-consumer recycled content. So why not start conversations now?
I know, but I think that the five of you are a representation of where we're headed. But we are where we are right now, which means a lot of silence, a lot of I don't talk to this person, I'm keeping my secrets to myself, I'm doing research only for my company so I make more money. Sustainability is not a long-term goal, it's a money-making goal. So they're just a traditional type of business, I guess.
But denim was so successful because brands pooled their demand together, and because like suppliers are more likely to innovate and really do things if there is some demand. If you're a small brand and you want to do something great in sustainability, but you have only a few thousand, like it's going to be hard to unlock that level of innovation. If you pool demand, and yes, then that one fabric is not going to be just yours, but it's going to be there in the market. And so that's
And I agree with you. I think fashion could learn from the denim industry. I think fashion could learn from the car industry, like you mentioned, Bilal. You know, when Tesla was the king of battery electric cars, the car industry got together and they were like, man, we got to get into this. How are we going to do this? They pulled their resources and they shared the technology. So it is possible, but the question is, can fashion do it? You know, and it's like a spoiled child. It's really hard to get them on board. But I feel like the five of you are an example of working together, collaborating for the same thing. Because you realize if you don't do it, the rest can't do it. That it takes all of you to achieve this goal, right?
Exactly. It needs collaboration across the value chain, right? From the collection to the brands. And as we have spoken a lot, we do need brands to really get the demand. You know, we want them to come forward and also ask for more sustainable solutions. And the other thing that we were also talking about was this. You know, you need to have this certain recycled content. It is coming, the regulation. But yes, maybe it's time to also incentivize technologies and incentivize innovations who are looking to get the best quality and amongst this in the recycled content. So we need to incentivize innovations who are really working towards getting the same qualities, closing the loop, multiple, and not just like one time open loop, but really closed loop, multiple theoretical.
I mean, I think your voice needs to get louder. I think we need to really shout our idea because I think it's really hard to hear over the noise that's happening right now. There's a lot of noise happening. Brands are very much ostriches, you know, heads in the sand, not going to happen to me, and kind of see what happens. So I'm a big fan of innovation, but I feel like it just doesn't get that platform to shout and for everyone to know. Because I'm sure if I was to ask some fashion industry, they wouldn't know what you guys do. They wouldn't know of your company. They know Gucci, they know Yves Saint Laurent, but they don't know what you guys are doing that's going to help save their business. So we need to actually not only incentivize, but also put limelight on you, what you're doing, you know, push it out there so everyone understands. You wanted to add?
I see it's changing about the spoiled kids you mentioned.
They are spoiled kids. Yes, go ahead.
But it's changing because all the brands, luxury brands that you mentioned, also others, we receive them in our plant for audits, for understanding what we are doing, what regarding to environment, also ethical. So they are very close to the tier 1 today.
Would luxury brands use recycled content though?
All the ones that you have in mind. I will not say the names, but they...
You don't have to mention names, but have they been using recycled content?
They are very prepared. They are very excited about knowing about the products that they are inserting in those collections. They are doing many audits to understand if what we are saying it's what we are doing. We receive them in the plant. So I think it's changing about I will do and I will not tell everybody what I'm doing now. It's changing because they realized that their image is the most important thing that they have. So if they do something wrong, the castle. So
I think like luxury brands walk a very fine line because they want to charge you £8,000 for a dress, and that's the finest luxury material. It's all beautiful, but then recycled content has never been seen as luxury. Maybe it should be because it's not an easy task, you know. So it'd be really hard for me to see like Chanel creating their dress out of recycled content and still have the audacity to charge me 12 grand for it. So for me, I think it's also changing the narrative, changing the language around recycled content so people can understand it as something that should be luxury to a degree because it takes a heck of a lot of work to get there in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah, but luxuries, but also to say like luxury is great and it's not necessarily a small industry, especially in terms of revenue. But in terms of volume of garments, I mean, we're producing 100 to 150 billion garments each year. How many of those are luxury? I think when it comes to penetrating the market with these innovations, we need volume.
Yeah.
And so we need also the lower priced items to be able to incorporate this. And maybe these customers are less critical and more open to getting these materials. But that's the thing, the volume is needed.
And
go ahead.
But I would also like to change the conception that recycled is necessarily inferior, right? That is also something that we need to change the perception. Ask your favorite brand, be it luxury or be it the mid-range, the economy brand, what are they offering for sustainable and how are they actually tackling the problem of post-consumer recycled waste and not just adding buttons into their product. So two things for sure. Yeah, recycled need not be inferior. In fact, incentivize, as I said, technologies that can make superior quality recycled garments, and it takes a lot of work.
I know it takes a lot of work. I feel like I need to wipe the sweat off my brow just for this conversation alone. But I want to go to you, Francisca, because you've been very quiet over there. And I want to talk to you a bit about partnerships because you have a really good kind of solution. And you've got the stage to kind of shout about it and let people understand what it is. What do you need from the industry to make kind of like give your solution a louder voice?
Well, I was quiet, but I followed the conversation with a lot of interest, and I thought that there were a lot of thoughts that play into our cards. And I think especially what we talked about, the partnerships, the incentivization, I think this is very important. And what I recognize that especially vertically integrated chains work very well because if you imagine, for example, this thread I talked about, there is a garment manufacturer that needs to pay more for the thread because it is more expensive than regular polyester thread, for example. So this person needs to pay more, and then there is a recycler who really gains something with it because there is a step less. He doesn't need to cut out by hand, for example, a button or whatever. And so as soon as it is vertically integrated, for example, we have a partnership in Portugal, and they sew garments. They do like everything from spinning to creating the garment to recycling. So they invest, but they also gain from it, and this helps a lot. And what I want to say, because you asked me about partnerships, we need all. And the best is that we have a system where everyone can profit from this. But how to do that? Vertically integration is, of course, one thing, but I don't think that is super realistic. But we need to partner up somehow with different types of industries and across all the industries, so everyone can profit from that.
So with your innovation, do you find, I mean, I found this because I used to write a lot about fashion and technology, that when a big brand loves an idea, let's say they love your idea, and then they say to you, listen, Francisca, we love it. We're going to pay you X amount of money, but you cannot work with anybody else. But you can work with us, LVMH, I'll just throw it out there, a big company, LVMH or Kering, and they come to you and they offer you money, but you're not allowed to work with anyone else in the industry. Is this something that you feel like you would say yes to? Because I do feel like a lot of innovators are offered such things by brands, but then they're kind of either shelved or they're kind of exclusively only available for that particular company. because fashion likes to kind of huddle all the ideas and,
Yeah.
and keep it to themselves, just so their competitors don't have access to that innovation, rather than looking at it like it's innovation for everyone and everyone has access to it. They want to make sure that only they have access to it. So how would you deal with that kind of situation?
That's absolutely true, and that also happened to us. And I
Do
think,
tell.
yeah, it did. I mean, you mentioned a lot of very innovative companies are approached by brands that want to have exclusiveness on their innovations. But we think that we can only solve a problem in a joint effort. And a great innovation needs to be spread around the world, so everyone should do it and use it, and so we can have a real impact. And that doesn't work with one partnership.
I agree. And what about you, Bilal? The same question to you. If they come and they say, love your technology, give it to us, and we'll pay you X amount.
Well, I'll have to ask my shareholders, but if I wish, penicillin is a good example. You know, the world, I'm more like, in that sense, a bit more, I would say futurist. At the same time, I'm very optimist. So I would probably love to go this way. It's free for everybody. But, you know, being another thing, I have a dilemma that charities are becoming businesses, you know, so you cannot just run a bigger impact with this mindset either. So we would like to make it as a commercial sense for them, for let's say a middle way somehow, that if a brand becomes a champion of offering an innovation to the others, they might have even a bigger brand value. So it's maybe there is some way to argue it, but of course you pick, just like, you know, the boss is the choice, so make better choices. That's how I believe it. So whoever invests in you becomes your boss. So I think I would like to stick to principles here.
Okay, that's a very political way of answering that question. Love it. Thank you. So I want to kind of, I'm going to quickly check the time because I feel like we're having such a long conversation and I want to give everybody a chance to wrap up. So let's wrap up because we've only got 5 more minutes. But before we do, anyone got a question for our panel? You don't have to be gentle. You can ask anything. They are happy to answer. Anyone? That tells me that you have covered pretty much everything really well because no one's got a question. So just to wrap up our conversation, I'd love from each one of you to kind of give me an idea of where you see the industry, fashion and textiles industry, headed, where you hope it will head, but where you think it's probably going to go. Let's start with you. So where you hope the industry goes, but where you think it's most likely going to go in the next 5 years.
I am the team that I believe they are developing well their technologies and solutions in a sustainable way. It's interesting because sometimes the brands a brand contact me, please, what do you have as responsible or sustainable solution? I say, sustainable is everything and nothing at the same time. What kind of sustainable solution you want? So sustainability now is taking some form, but before that they say, sustainable. What do you mean about sustainable? So it was everything and nothing. So I see also an interesting point is each brand finds its sustainable solution. So one wants to understand about the life cycle assessment, reducing CO2. The other one wants a bio-based solution, 100%. The other one wants just recycled. So as I have all the solutions and I want to sell better, to understand adopting their strategy, I have to understand and I explain all the topics, all the details, and each brand adopts what they believe more. And this is nice because so I see they are taking their road, but I see different roads in the market. But at the end is good.
Do you know what, Daniela? I'm going to quote you. Sustainability is everything and nothing at the same time. Really like that, actually. And you're right. Everyone is on their own journey. So, and you're very positive about it. So let's move on to you. Are you going to be as positive? What do you hope in the next 5 years?
So because there's a lot of regulation coming in the next 5 years, because there's a lot of, when we speak specifically about recycling, there's a lot of recycling technologies on the horizon, about to build their first full-scale plant in about 2 years. So in 5 years, what I hope to see is that there's actual commercial installed capacity for textile-to-textile recycling. That's also dedicated to post-consumer, because what we see is first-generation technologies focus on post-industrial, maybe first. So hopefully, yes, installed capacity for textile-to-textile recycling at scale, and that we can really push these materials into new supply chains, or in the supply chains. Eco-design, DPP will help us. A lot of them are actually fueled by regulation that is coming. I'm maybe less optimistic about, there's the whole competition, like the whole race to the bottom when it comes to price. And the fact that we can have all this regulation in Europe, but that's not global regulation. US is not going to help us. Asia is not going to help us. Or so in terms of cheap garments coming in from other areas where some of these brands have to compete. So for brands is a very challenging time with all this regulation, also having to cut down CO2 50% by 2030 if those goals were set for 2030. I mean, I'd be happy if we make it. So actually, yeah, I think the world's going to look different, but I feel like we're not going to be there yet. The main thing that we really need to do on a global scale is reduce production and overconsumption.
I think you make a point. The EU regulations are looking after Europe, but fashion is a global business. So it's not just about our part of the world and what we can do, but we're also looking at how the other parts of the world are also going to be able to do better at the
biggest
same level.
markets, the biggest growing markets are not in Europe.
No.
So that's also maybe not even what most of the brands are focusing on. The bigger brands are focusing on.
Asia is quite a big market as well. But I think you make a good point there. It is a global problem, not a Europe problem. What would you like to add, Franziska?
What I want to add, what I see really positive is that I think almost all the brands or people I speak to are super interested and they really know something is going to change and they need to change something. So I'm positive about that. I think it starts to, mindset starts to change. But I think we speak a lot about the regulations. This is something that I recognize as well. For example, here at the fair, that people don't really know what's happening. All the EPR, EPSR, whatever, all the talk, but they don't really know what will happen and what this means for their brands, what do they need to change, what helps them. And I hope that in 5 years there's more clarity. Right now it seems a little bit like chaos. There are some people that know about it because they do this, they're professionals in it. I think they sit here on the stage, but a lot of brands don't know, and I really hope for clarity here.
I agree with you on that, and that's where I think that local governments should play a role, because they're the ones that can actually provide information, even funding, incentives to help fashion businesses, do better and also comply with legislations. And this is something I push a lot in the UK, because the UK feels like it's out and therefore it doesn't have to apply to EU regulations. But if you do business in France, Netherlands, Germany, you have to comply. But then there is no government support. And fashion being such a big part of the economy, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's a matter of who's going to survive it. So I think you're right. How do we educate the industry so they know what to do and how to prepare? And I feel like this is a conversation we've been having for years, but no one's really coming up with the how. But we are really recognizing the fact that there is this massive knowledge gap. So yeah, hope as well. Hope in 5 years there's more clarity. I agree. Bilal, what's your hope?
Okay, this time I'm going to try to be less political. No, it's a very tricky question, to be honest. What I wish and what I predict are so far apart. When you look at globally, it's becoming very protectionist type of environment. For example, I was reading news recently that CSDDD, you might have heard about, this director for due diligence. Qatar threatened EU that if EU implements, they will have gas supply chain problems. So we are so interconnected, and now we are moving towards more protectionism as unfortunate in the next at least 5 years horizon if we look at. So the impact seems to be going the negative side, unfortunately. But I don't want to be the bearer of the bad news here. But if we look at, again, the car industry, if I remember, as far as Tesla was not the electric cars, the driver was not the regulations. It was just that the right thing to do at that time, and that just started an example. So what I would like to look at that to counter this, the companies, innovators like sitting here, the brilliant, this panelist, we need to be a bit more bold to showcase that. I'll give another example. When we started developing paper tail technology, regulations were not on the horizon, and we were selling transparency in a new way, and we had a lot of struggle. So what happened? No brand wanted to hear us. So we, in the end, got bored, and we just made our own collection of 300 T-shirts. We sold in Sweden. And 42% consumers, they compensated even for their impact. So that led to the whole thing. So my point is, even though regulations, I believe, are the biggest driver, we shouldn't just wait for that to, because that's very political. We don't know what's going to happen with that. Maybe they got delayed. Are we going to just stand still? So I would say we just collaborate more and be a bit more bold in pushing it, bringing the brands, getting their ears, like you as well, bringing these debates, and going beyond just a regulations discussion.
I like the fact that you're asking people to be bold. I think they're very fearful of failing, but they don't know that failing is actually a lesson. You can learn from failing and do better. Yep. So to be bold is definitely a very good message to share. Last but not least, Madhura, what would you like to share?
It's good that I'm going last because I can actually draw on each of them, and they make very good points, right? As Daniela said, there's so many solutions out there, and we also discussed that there is still a need of clarity as to what constitutes as recyclable, what is post-industrial, what is post-consumer, what are we doing for that. So there needs to be a clear understanding. There needs to be clarity of what is recyclability, what is recycled content, how much of it needs to be in there. And legislation will play a role, but as Bilal also mentioned, it should not hinder us either. So like chain of custody and recycling technologies should also not be limited by legislation as more than what they are currently with the GRS, RCS certifications. Also, it is, as you mentioned, it's a global problem. We did talk about the global south. I mean, the waste collection, the infrastructure, EU, need not just be in EU, meaning waste, the textile waste is a global problem, so waste also should not be limited to, the EU waste needs to be tackled first, or this waste needs to be tackled first. We are here to reduce the global textile waste problem. The waste can come from anywhere, but I do agree that we need post-industrial, not just the post-industrial, but we really need to tackle the textile waste problem, which is actually being generated by the post-consumer waste and not post-industrial only. So from what I wish, we are, with our technology, we are considering scaling up. We are already in the process of scaling up in post-industrial as well as post-consumer. So Lupamid will be available with the waste generated from both. And so that would be my wish, that the time for action is now. There's enough enough discussion about it, and of course everyone wants to tread cautiously, but the brands need to come together, the consumers need to come together, and we need to collaborate across the value chain to really get into the game and actually act.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to say I wish that you don't mind that we went over, and I hope that they provided you with enough information to make the next step forward. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks.